Ethan Gray had always been a man the city both admired and feared. His name was associated with skyscrapers, billion-dollar deals, and ruthless decisions that built him into one of the youngest self-made millionaires in New York. But beneath all the headlines and financial victories, there was one truth society never stopped whispering about: his marriage. For 3 years, he had been married to Isabella Reyes, a woman of breathtaking beauty and quiet dignity. Yet the world knew that theirs was no ordinary marriage. Rumors circled endlessly, tabloids printed stories with mocking titles, and at every social gathering, people whispered behind champagne glasses. She was known as the millionaire's untouched wife. The truth was even harsher. On the night of their wedding, when the city skyline glittered like a sea of diamonds beyond the penthouse windows, Isabella had stood quietly in her gown, a faint hope still flickering in her heart. She thought maybe, just maybe, her husband would offer her a kind word, a smile, or even a promise of companionship. But Ethan had walked past her without a second glance, poured himself a drink, and spoken words that froze her heart for years to come. "Don't expect romance. Don't expect affection. This marriage is nothing but a deal." His voice had been cold, final, and unyielding. Isabella swallowed her tears that night. She had not married Ethan out of love. She had married him out of desperation. Her father, once a powerful businessman, had lost everything in a series of disastrous deals. Debts piled up, creditors circled like vultures, and her family faced utter ruin. Ethan's proposal had been a lifeline, an arrangement that saved her father from prison and restored some dignity to her family name. But the price was her heart. For 3 long years, she lived in the same house as Ethan, yet felt as if they were strangers in every sense. They shared no intimacy, no warmth, not even a single touch. Their lives ran on parallel tracks. Ethan buried himself in his empire, leaving before dawn and returning long after midnight, his mind always locked on strategies, mergers, and power struggles. Isabella, left alone, filled her days with quiet strength. She spent hours reading, painting, and most of all, dedicating herself to charity. She became known for visiting orphanages and shelters, offering kindness and comfort where she could. Society saw her as gracious and gentle, but beneath her calm smile, she carried a storm of loneliness. Night after night, when she lay in the vast emptiness of their bed, she cried silently, wishing for the smallest gesture of affection. Ethan noticed her, even though he tried to pretend otherwise. He noticed the way she carried herself with grace in public despite the whispers, the way her laughter, rare but genuine, could light up a room, the way her presence softened the cold walls of their penthouse. But he forced himself to turn away. He had locked his heart years ago, convinced that emotions made men weak, and weakness had no place in the empire he built. To love meant to risk loss, and loss was something he could never afford again. The turning point came on the evening of their 3rd anniversary. Ethan's empire had just taken its hardest blow. A powerful rival corporation had launched a smear campaign against him, accusing him of corruption and fraud. Headlines screamed across newspapers, investors pulled their money, and for the first time, cracks appeared in his carefully built empire. Ethan came home that night, his mind heavy, his soul exhausted. When he walked into the dining room, he froze. The table was set with candles, soft light dancing across silverware. Isabella stood there in a simple blue dress, her eyes calm yet filled with something he hadn't seen before: determination. "You've had a hard day," she said softly, her voice steady but filled with warmth. "Sit, eat." Ethan sat silently, too weary to argue. As the meal went on, Isabella put down her fork, looked him straight in the eye, and said words that shook him more than any corporate betrayal ever could. "Ethan, you don't have to fight alone. I'm your wife. Let me stand with you." His chest tightened. For 3 years, he had given her nothing: no love, no partnership, not even basic kindness. And yet, here she was, offering him loyalty without condition. That night, for the first time in years, Ethan lay awake thinking not about deals or rivals but about Isabella. He remembered the way she smiled at children in the shelters, the way she carried herself with quiet dignity despite his neglect, the way her voice had trembled yet stayed strong when she told him she wanted to stand by him. He realized he had been blind. Days later, at a grand gala filled with the city's most powerful elites, the rumors finally reached their boiling point. Ethan and Isabella walked in together, she radiant in a navy gown that caught the light like starlight. As usual, Ethan wore his mask of cold indifference, but whispers followed them like shadows. Near the champagne table, one of his rivals smirked, loud enough for everyone to hear. 3 years, Ethan. 3 years and your wife still looks like a stranger. Tell us, was she just a decoration for your empire? Laughter followed, cruel and sharp. Isabella felt her cheeks burn. She lowered her eyes, wishing she could disappear. But in that moment, Ethan did something that stunned the entire room. He stepped forward, wrapped his arm firmly around Isabella's waist, and pulled her close. Gasps echoed, cameras flashed, and silence swept across the hall. For the first time in 3 years, Ethan looked at his wife not as a stranger but with fierce possession and pride. His voice cut through the crowd like steel. She's not decoration. She's not just my wife in name. She is the only woman I will ever claim as mine. Before anyone could recover, Ethan bent down and kissed her. The kiss wasn't staged. It wasn't for cameras or society. It was raw, real, and filled with the passion he had denied for years. Isabella froze in shock, her heart racing, tears pricking her eyes. The room spun, but all she felt was him, the warmth of his touch, the sincerity of his claim. For the first time, she wasn't invisible. She was his. The world erupted the next morning. Headlines screamed about the millionaire's kiss. Speculation ran wild. Had the untouched wife finally become the true Mrs. Gray? For Isabella, the world didn't matter anymore. What mattered was the man who, that night, came to her not as the cold, untouchable millionaire but as a vulnerable man. I stayed away because I was afraid, Ethan confessed, his voice breaking as he held her hands. Afraid to love, afraid to lose. I thought pushing you away would protect me, but I was wrong. You've been braver than me all along. I don't want to waste another day. Tears streamed down Isabella's cheeks as she whispered, I never wanted your money, Ethan. I only wanted you to see me. From that night forward, Ethan changed. Slowly at first, cautiously, but with undeniable sincerity. He began spending time with her. Long walks in Central Park, quiet dinners at home, even joining her at the orphanages she loved so much. He discovered a world outside of boardrooms and skyscrapers, a world of kindness, laughter, and humanity, all because of her. Isabella, in turn, began to heal. The loneliness of 3 years melted as Ethan opened his heart piece by piece. She had waited silently, endured humiliation, and carried pain with grace, but now she was finally living as a wife loved and cherished. Months later, when Ethan's empire had recovered and grown stronger than ever, he hosted a press conference. The world expected him to speak about his business victory. Instead, Ethan held Isabella's hand in front of flashing cameras and stunned reporters. His voice was steady, proud, and filled with love. 3 years ago, I married Isabella for convenience. But today, I stand before you knowing she is the reason I am the man I am now. I didn't just marry her. I found my home in her. The room erupted in applause, reporters scrambling to capture every word, but Ethan saw only Isabella, her eyes glistening with tears, her smile radiant and full of love. For the first time, the whispers stopped. Society no longer mocked her. They admired her. She was no longer the untouched wife. She was the woman who had tamed the coldest millionaire in New York, the woman who had waited with patience, endured with strength, and finally claimed her rightful place in his heart. And so, the man who once believed love was weakness discovered that love was his greatest strength. The millionaire who had built empires with steel and stone finally realized that the most valuable treasure he ever had was the woman standing beside him. Ethan Gray had finally claimed his wife, not as a contract, not as a transaction, but as the love of his life, his partner, his home.